Where are your whereabouts?
Sure. Well, right now I live outside of Denver, Colorado, part of the Denver, Colorado metro area. So Colorado is a state in the United States that's kind of western, middle, and the Rocky Mountains are there. It's pretty well known for skiing and snowboarding and winter sports, which I don't really partake in, but I live here anyways.
Are you originally from there or you moved there?
I moved here. I've been here for maybe 12 or 13 years now, but I'm originally from a medium-sized town right in the middle of Missouri, which is a state in the United States that is like the middle of the middle of the middle.
Would you mind saying the name of the state?
Oh, sure.
Of the city,
Yeah,
not of the
it's
state, sorry.
Columbia, Missouri.
No idea. I tried.
Yeah, yeah, right, yeah. When I have traveled before and met people and talked to people, it's always lovely to engage with folks, but inevitably the question comes up like, where are you from? And I over the years I've kind of tried different strategies, right? I'm like, oh, I'm from let's see, do you know where Chicago is? And folks are kind of like, kinda. And I'm like, well, I'm like 600 miles from there, right? Yeah.
You know where Chicago is? That not from there.
Yeah, no, no. I
I,
did though, funnily enough, I went to grad school in Kansas, which is nearby. And and so there was a time in my life where people say, where are you from? And I say Kansas. And overwhelmingly, people from all over the world would say, oh, Wizard of Oz. And I'd be like, oh, yes, yeah, Wizard of Oz, yeah.
Dorothy. I
Yeah.
mean, uh, I have a cultural problem with Wizard of Oz, and I want to go on this rant now because I keep discussing with my work colleagues. I live in Germany at the moment, but I keep discussing with my work colleagues about Wizard of Oz. And it took me a while to explain them what Wizard of Oz is.
I
And
I mean, it's amazing, like how pervasive the Wizard of Oz is across the world. Apparently, I mean, not everybody knows about it, but I was really surprised to learn that was like a cultural touchstone that so many people were aware of about the United States. Yeah. Uh,
how was Emily? How was growing up in a small city in the mid of the US?
yeah, it was lovely. And also both sort of like kind of exactly what you might be imagining and nothing at all like what you might be imagining. I I grew up in sort of a mid-sized city that also was the university town for like the entire state. So the big college was there. There were two other universities that were there, two colleges, one university that was there. And so even though we were kind of in the middle of what would be largely agricultural, there was this very large cultural hub that even had a pretty large international population. So that was kind of my experience once I left the city and started going to college in the United States, meeting more people. I've only ever lived in the United States, but that as I was sort of describing what my Missouri experience was like to people, they would be like, "Oh, that is not the stereotype I was expecting," and it's kind of both. It's both the middle of the middle of the middle, but also this sort of interesting aspect of being a really large university town.
What kind of kid you were? Yeah.
Oh. I am the youngest of four. And so I think that impacted me a lot. That I was, kind of this like independent little roamer, right? And I think there was a combination of growing up pretty quick because I was learning so much from my older siblings. But also just like, and now that I'm older, right, I can like really better appreciate the sort of like exhaustion that my parents must have felt, by the time four came around, right? That's just like, you know what? It seems like you're doing a good job of managing yourself, and I'm just going to let you by all means, right? Yeah.
I,
So I was given a lot of independence and I loved it. Yeah.
that's what made you questioning the rules somehow from that age, or give you the freedom to do that.
I think so. Yeah. I think this is like kind of what I do now is so much a part of who I am. And this idea of the independence, like independence can be wonderful and there can be a lot of freedom in that, but also there's a lot of responsibility and requirement to figure out what's going on, this sort of like lack of guidance or control or kind of whatever flavor that shows up in. It does mean that you are kind of figuring it out. Um, and uh, and I think that I happen to take a fair amount of pleasure in that. So that's really good. That was very lucky for me. Yeah.
Would you call it a kind of a street smart?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, um, do you have kids, Emily?
I don't have
I
kids.
don't. Okay, that's I have a small boy, and that's one of the things that I'm struggling the most with to find the break-even point between pampering him and giving him the freedom to do whatever I have done, because I realize more and more that even in school they have this crazy care of having this closed circuit. Nobody's allowed to get in. They don't get any connection with the outside of the school, and this is something that kind of scared me for the real world, because this attitude of, come on, nothing can happen, nothing bad can happen, just play calm. This is something that you actually need when you go out of that bubble in school.
Yeah. Like I don't have kids myself, but I have a ton of like empathy and curiosity about like those questions exactly, because I think that everyone, we are not living in the world that any of us grew up in, right? And so even the lessons that we may have been able to learn within our own childhoods and development, and even as adults who are preparing for adulthood, responsibility, parenthood, whatever, if those lessons were learned 10 years ago, then we also have it, right? Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It is tough out there.
I keep saying that besides the basics of, I don't know, do not steal, do not kill, do not, like the basics, um, everything else is subject to change. Like, really, everything else is subject to change. My favorite one is this. If we talk about the food industry, I think 30 years ago, nobody said anything about sugar, and everyone was talking about fat. Since 10 years ago, now everyone is talking, no, 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 you should give fat to the kid because the brain is only made from fat, but you should not give him sugar anymore because sugar is bad. And this is just a small example. This is something that came from the top of my head, and I'm talking a lot with my wife about this, and it's a, you cannot, there is, so they don't come with a, they unfortunately they don't come with a user's manual. There is no user's manual, there is no introduction in parenting. I love people giving lessons how to raise your kid without having a kid. I love them.
Yeah. And another thing. Yeah.
I love them. I just love them. You have no idea. I don't go into detail. And every small detail that you can think about, and it's incredible how much they are copying you. And I think the one thing that my son will be 7 in September, so I'm still young in this role, and I'm still learning. And most probably I'll know everything by the time he's 18 and he left the house. But the only thing that I can say it's practice what you preach, because he doesn't listen to what you're saying. He's watching what you're doing. And if you want him to, I don't know, do sports, you have to make sports before him. If you want him to behave, you have to behave in front of him.
Yeah. Our brains are very much attracted to other humans and what other humans do. So that definitely does occupy like a really powerful space for us. But it really is our entire environments too. Yeah.
Makes sense.
And this is like where a big turn has occurred for us. Like it used to be that our environment was needed to be physically near us for us to sense it, right? And that's no longer the case anymore. like our environments are potentially as expansive as the internet.
I love the fact that we are able to do this, and I love the internet because we are able to do this, what we are doing now. But we have a few thousand miles between us, and we have this conversation, which is amazing. But on the other side, it's sad when you do this and you are in the same city, or maybe you are a few kilometers away because of the comfort of leaving your nest. And I think this is something, you are right. I think this is something that we got used to maybe a bit too much in the last period, and we really don't know how to navigate the change yet. Did somehow the strict rules that you had in these jobs made you go towards rethinking the rules and remaking the rules?
I have always had a strong, or as long as I can remember, I've had a very strong interest in rule making and rule breaking, right? That most, like any social rule that we are participating in, be it judicial, be it legislative, be it criminal, that they are ones that are socially constructed, and there are points in which they are empowered and followed, and then there are points in which they are not, right? And people start departing from that. And this sort of dynamic, this sort of soft structure of these rules has always been very interesting to me, and how they can become very rigid and very powerful, and then also very not. So that's kind of how I sum up my interest, and how I kind of got pulled into the work that I do and into the conversations that I have, is this sort of individual rulemaking and rule breaking, this societal level rulemaking and rule breaking, and sort of how we construct these ideas and these rules for ourselves, and how powerful they can be on our choices and our behaviors, and then how sometimes they can just disappear, and what that means too. Mm-hmm.
Interesting point of view, because you would think that in your, like you said, you worked a lot in the government, and you think you have a lot of power to change things, but at one moment you realize you don't. Like you are constricted by different rules that someone made a few time ago. I would just say it without mentioning the time. But do you think that everything that has to do with the government is something that it's a hard process to be changed?
Often, but that isn't always a bad thing either. I think that when so separate from the idea of whether or not an institution is acting well with and on the people, right? Sometimes you've got these these government institutions, and they can be acting very problematically upon the people, and they can also be acting very positively on the people. But also, there is a lot of sort of stability and intermingling that's going on with these institutions too. So they just tend to be these really powerful forces in a community. And because of that power, they absolutely should be able to change. This is kind of where I made my turn for the work that I do now, which is what I was seeing, was that very smart, very reasonable, very well-meaning people, right? Which is the best case scenario, and that is not always the case. That the information tools that we were building were outpacing people's abilities to really use them, to incorporate them into their decision making, right? I mean, again, these are very smart, very well-meaning people. This is the folks that I work with, but this new information landscape that we find ourselves in is unlike anything that we were ever trained for. And it was unlike anything that our brains have ever evolved to manage. So trying to figure out really how to ingest and process this amount of information in my own human brain, right, in a way that will allow me to make better and better choices, to ask better and better questions. It's very challenging.
I think the critical part is to build a relational connection between the data, to relate them somehow, to understand what's connected with what and why. And I think because of the amount of data that we are getting today, I think it's hard to put it in an Excel file to make it.
For sure. And this is like the meaning making of it all is kind of how I refer to that, right? And it's not just the meaning so like when you go way downstream on these processes, the meaning making is essentially like what you care about, right? Which is maybe the choices your employees make is what you're attempting to figure out. And if they're making the quote unquote right choices. And then you have this data processing system that is documenting probably not that, but maybe something close to it that now we're treating as that, right? And there's a lot of organization that can absolutely be done super well, and it can absolutely be done not very well. and then it's being presented to folks who are supposed to use it to make some really impactful and important decisions. And you better hope that everything is working good by the time it gets up there.
A big part of it is still our fault in translating not what we want to have, but or not what we are, but translating what we want to be.
Or not even that, what we think other people want us to be, which
exactly.
is probably both wrong, honestly.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yes.
Absolutely.
Completely agree. Yeah. And this is where that sort of optimization issue, right? So that is what I would say is happening there too, that folks are saying, they think my problem is not enough people are saying yes to me, right? Or swiping right to me, which means that I need to present myself in a way that optimizes the number of people that say, yes, I want this person. I want to match with this person.
It's a matter of numbers, not of quality.
Exactly, right? Which then just leads to everyone being super frustrated that they're now spending a bunch of time interacting with people that they don't get along with, right? But, it's like, okay, well, let's back it up a little bit. Let's see how we got there, right? And this is sort of the mindset shift that I work with people, but it's based in these information dynamics, right? That like what you are doing is actually setting yourself up for a worse situation, because now you have a larger pool of people who are less compatible with the outcomes that you want. So you're just creating sort of more informational labor for yourself, which is already the problem that we have. So we're just kind of exacerbating that same issue.
So we are, yeah. I think the focus on quantity over quality, it's something that we have it as an issue in the society at the moment, because we do that in mostly everything. And I think absolutely right. You are not focusing on having that perfect match of 1-to-1. You want to have that match of 1-to-many, so that you can choose again, because you don't really know what you want.
Yeah. And in some cases, there is power in volume, but it is not the solution to every problem.
Any final advice for someone who's feeling overwhelmed or stuck?
Yeah, I think the most important thing to remember is that all of these choice tech tools, this information technology tools, they are just that. They are just tools. They are not a life. They are not your life. And they are everywhere, and they do have potential, but they don't have to be anything. And that what is most important is who you want to be and how you want to live and what relationship you want to have with these tools, not the other way around.
And it's okay not to be able to handle them on their own. And if you need help to handle those, Emily, where people can find you? I need a nice...
Well, yes. Folks can find me, Emily Pabst, at remaketherules.com, my website, and then at Remake the Rules on many social platforms too.
I will link all the social links in the show notes captions anyhow, on YouTube and Spotify. Emily, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. I had a great time.